The courtroom echoed with murmurs as Victoria adjusted Liam's blanket in his wheelchair. Her heart pounded, though her expression remained calm, a mask she had perfected over years of struggle. Today wasn't just another day of seeking justice. Today was about proving Liam's place in a family that had tried to erase him. The story began nearly a decade earlier, back when Robert's promises of love and stability had crumbled into betrayal. They had been the golden couple: Robert, heir to a vast family estate, and Victoria, a determined and intelligent woman with dreams of building a family rooted in love. But when Liam was born, everything changed. Diagnosed with a rare spinal condition that confined him to a wheelchair by the age of 3, Liam became a symbol of weakness in Robert's eyes, a stark contrast to the powerful lineage Robert prided himself on. The cracks in their marriage became fissures. Robert withdrew emotionally and financially, eventually walking out on them entirely. "I can't do this anymore," he had said, his cold tone still haunting Victoria. He left, moving to another city, erasing them both from his life. Victoria was undeterred. She focused on Liam, who had inherited not only her resilience but also her sharp mind. Together, they navigated a life far from the luxury Robert had once promised. She worked tirelessly, teaching Liam to value himself despite his father's abandonment. But when Robert's father, Henry, passed away, the past clawed its way back into their lives. Henry had been a formidable patriarch, known for his philanthropy and insistence on legacy. Victoria had no illusions that she'd receive anything from his will, but she had dared to hope that Liam, as Henry's grandson, might be remembered. She was wrong. The reading of the will was a private affair, and Victoria wasn't invited. She only learned of its contents when Robert announced it publicly. He was the sole beneficiary. Henry wanted his legacy to remain strong, undiluted by outsiders, Robert declared during a press conference, his words dripping with the self-righteousness she knew too well. But something about the announcement didn't sit right with Victoria. Henry had been distant but not cruel. He had met Liam once when the boy was a baby and had seemed moved by him, even shedding a rare tear. It didn't add up that he would entirely erase his grandson from his legacy. The doubts gnawed at her until one day, while sorting through old belongings, Victoria found a photograph of Henry holding a young Liam. Tucked behind the photo was a letter, a short but heartfelt note from Henry to Liam. "You are the future of this family, little one," it read. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." The note ignited a fire within her. She began digging into the details of Henry's estate, uncovering discrepancies that hinted at something sinister. A whispered conversation with an old family lawyer confirmed her suspicions. The original will had been altered, but proving it would be a monumental task. The evidence she had gathered so far was circumstantial at best. To go against Robert and his army of lawyers would require more than determination. It would require irrefutable proof. Victoria knew one person who might help, a reclusive former lawyer named Evelyn Grant, who had once taken on high-profile cases against corporate giants and won. Convincing Evelyn to take on her case, however, was another matter entirely. The woman was known for her disdain for familial disputes, calling them a waste of my time and talent. Determined, Victoria visited Evelyn at her secluded estate. She pleaded her case, painting a vivid picture of Liam's life. His laughter, his dreams of becoming an inventor, his belief in fairness despite the world's cruelty. She showed Evelyn the note from Henry, her voice trembling as she spoke of her son's right to belong. Evelyn, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally leaned back in her chair. "If you're lying to me, you'll regret it," she said. But there was a glint of something in her eyes, perhaps admiration for Victoria's resolve. The next weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvers and investigations. Evelyn proved to be a ruthless ally, dissecting financial records, emails, and testimonies with surgical precision. Together, they uncovered a shocking revelation. Robert had colluded with the estate's executor to forge an amendment to the will, removing Liam entirely. The original document, naming Liam as the primary heir, had been hidden away. But uncovering the truth was only half the battle. Presenting it in court against Robert, who wielded wealth and influence like a weapon, would be a war. Victoria and Evelyn prepared relentlessly, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. And as Victoria stood in that courtroom, her son by her side, she knew they were ready. The truth would come out no matter the cost. The courtroom was suffused with tension as Robert entered, flanked by his lawyers. He wore his signature smug smirk, the same expression Victoria had grown to despise. His navy blue suit was tailored to perfection, and he moved with the arrogance of a man who believed he'd already won. Victoria kept her eyes on Liam, who sat upright in his wheelchair beside her. His tenacity reminded her why she was here. She leaned down and whispered, "We've got this." Liam gave her a small, reassuring smile. He had become her anchor in this storm. Robert's lead attorney, Mr. Grayson, was a sharp-tongued litigator known for dismantling cases with precision. "My client," he began, "is the rightful and sole heir to Henry Price's estate. This frivolous case is nothing more than an attempt to extort wealth from a grieving son." Evelyn, seated beside Victoria, smirked as she shuffled through her meticulously organized files. "Let him talk," she whispered, her tone dripping with confidence. As Grayson continued his opening statement, detailing the supposed authenticity of the amended will, Evelyn scribbled quick notes. When he finished, she rose with a deliberate calm that instantly shifted the energy in the room. "My clients, Victoria Price and her son Liam, are not here to extort anyone. They're here to reclaim what was stolen from them." Her voice was sharp, commanding, and every word was weighted with purpose. She moved toward the jury, meeting their eyes one by one. "We're here to prove that Mr. Robert Price tampered with his father's will, erasing his son, his own flesh and blood, from the legacy Henry Price intended for him." Evelyn's first piece of evidence was the photograph Victoria had found, the one showing Henry holding Liam as a baby. As it was displayed on the courtroom's projector, Victoria saw a flicker of discomfort cross Robert's face. Evelyn stepped closer to the jury. "This photograph is more than a moment frozen in time," Evelyn said. "It's a testament to the bond between Henry Price and his grandson. But let's not rely on sentiment alone. Let's talk about the letter." She held up the note Henry had written, carefully preserved in a protective sleeve. This was found tucked behind the photograph, written in Henry Price's own hand. It reads, and I quote, "You are the future of this family, little one. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." She paused for effect. "Ladies and gentlemen, this letter was written months before the alleged amended will. Does that sound like a man who intended to exclude his grandson?" Robert's legal team immediately objected, but the judge allowed the evidence to stand. Evelyn wasn't finished. She brought in a handwriting analyst who confirmed the authenticity of the letter and compared it to the handwriting on the amended will. The analyst's testimony was damning. "The handwriting on the amended will does not match Henry Price's natural script," he concluded. "It is a forgery." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but Grayson quickly countered, dismissing the letter and photograph as irrelevant. "There's no concrete proof that Henry Price intended to leave his estate to Liam. Sentimental evidence is not legal evidence." Evelyn was prepared for this. She presented bank records showing unexplained payments to the estate executor around the time the will was amended. These payments, totaling over $500,000, coincide with the exact time frame when the will was allegedly altered. "Mr. Executor, would you care to explain these transactions?" The executor, who had been subpoenaed to testify, stammered under questioning. They were consulting fees, he claimed, but the jury could see through his flimsy excuse. Victoria stole a glance at Robert. His composure was beginning to crack, his jaw tightening as Evelyn systematically dismantled his defense. But the piece de resistance was yet to come. Evelyn called an unexpected witness, Robert's former secretary, Linda. Victoria hadn't seen Linda in years, but she remembered the kind woman who had once doted on Liam. Linda was visibly nervous as she took the stand, but her testimony was explosive. "I was instructed by Mr. Price to shred certain documents," Linda confessed, her voice trembling. "I didn't question it at the time, But now I realize one of those documents was the original will. I kept a digital copy just in case. The courtroom erupted. Robert shot to his feet, shouting, "She's lying." The judge pounded his gavel, demanding order. Linda handed over a flash drive containing the original will, which Evelyn had already verified. Projected on the screen, the document clearly named Liam as the primary heir to Henry's estate, with specific instructions to ensure his medical and educational needs were met. Robert's face turned ashen. The jury was riveted, their eyes darting between him and the evidence on display. Evelyn delivered the final blow. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is irrefutable. Robert Price not only forged his father's will but also destroyed the original to ensure his son, Liam, would receive nothing. This is not just theft. It's a betrayal of family." The judge announced a recess, but the damage was done. Victoria sat back, her hands trembling. Liam reached for her, his small hand gripping hers tightly. "You did it, Mom," he whispered. "No," she corrected, her voice cracking. "We did it." The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in years, Victoria felt a glimmer of hope. When the court reconvened, the tension was palpable. The jury filed back into their seats, their faces etched with the weight of what they had just witnessed. Victoria clutched Liam's hand as Evelyn gathered her final notes, her sharp eyes scanning the courtroom like a predator ready for the kill. Robert's attorneys tried to regain control, but the damage was already done. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged handwriting, the bribed executor, and now the unshredded original will, which unequivocally named Liam as the rightful heir. Still, Robert refused to back down. "This is a conspiracy against me," Robert bellowed, standing suddenly, his face flushed with anger. "My father would never leave his fortune to a child who—" He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he was about to say something that would seal his fate. "To a child who what?" Evelyn asked coldly, stepping toward him. "Say it, Mr. Price." "To a child who uses a wheelchair. To a child who wasn't perfect in your eyes. Is that why you erased Liam from his own inheritance? Because he didn't fit into your image of a worthy heir?" The courtroom fell silent. Robert's face twisted in rage, but he had no response. Evelyn turned to the jury, her voice calm but cutting. "This case isn't just about money. It's about a man who chose greed over his own son. A man who valued his pride and reputation more than the love of his father and the bond of family." With her closing argument delivered, Evelyn returned to her seat beside Victoria. She placed a reassuring hand on Victoria's arm. "It's out of our hands now." Hours later, the jury returned with their verdict. The foreperson stood, her hands steady as she read aloud. "We find in favor of the plaintiffs, Victoria Price and Liam Price. We also recommend that criminal charges be pursued against Robert Price for fraud and embezzlement." Victoria exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Liam let out a small gasp, his face lighting up with relief. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Robert slumped into his chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. The judge ordered Robert to repay the stolen funds to Henry's estate and granted full control of the inheritance to Victoria as Liam's legal guardian. But the ruling didn't stop there. The judge also recommended further investigation into Robert's dealings, hinting at severe consequences for his actions. As the courtroom emptied, reporters swarmed Victoria and Evelyn, microphones thrust toward them. Victoria shielded Liam as Evelyn expertly deflected the questions. "Justice has been served today," she said firmly. "That's all we have to say." But the day wasn't over. Outside the courthouse, a sleek black car waited for Victoria and Liam. As they approached, a man stepped out, a lawyer representing Henry's foundation. He carried an envelope with Henry's signature seal. "Mrs. Price, Mr. Price left one more thing for Liam," the lawyer said, handing her the envelope. "He wanted it delivered only if today's trial went in your favor." Victoria opened it carefully, her hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten letter from Henry and a set of legal documents. "Dear Liam," the letter began, I always believed you would rise above the challenges life placed before you. This estate is only the beginning. Enclosed are instructions for accessing a foundation I set up in your name. It will ensure your future and allow you to help others who face similar struggles. Use it wisely, my boy. You are my greatest legacy. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she read the words aloud to Liam. The accompanying documents revealed a trust fund worth millions, established separately from the main estate, specifically for Liam's medical care, education, and charitable initiatives. As the reality of their victory sank in, Robert stormed toward them, his face red with fury. You think you've won, he spat. This isn't over. Evelyn stepped between them, her voice like ice. Oh, it's over, Mr. Price. And if you try anything else, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life behind bars. Robert hesitated, his bravado faltering, before retreating with his legal team. Victoria watched him go, feeling an overwhelming sense of closure. For years he had cast a shadow over her and Liam's lives, but now that shadow had lifted. Months later, Victoria and Liam sat in the sunlit living room of their new home, a modest but beautiful property nestled in the countryside. Liam had started physical therapy at a top-notch facility funded by the trust, and his confidence had grown by leaps and bounds. I've been thinking, Liam said one evening as they worked on a model airplane together. I want to use part of the trust to help kids like me. Maybe a camp for kids in wheelchairs or scholarships for their families. Victoria smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Your grandfather would be so proud of you. And you, Mom, Liam said, his voice soft but steady. You never gave up on me. Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged him. I'll never stop fighting for you, Liam. Never. Their story, once marked by betrayal and loss, had transformed into one of resilience and hope. Victoria had not only reclaimed Liam's inheritance but had also shown her son that strength comes from within, and that love, above all, is the most powerful legacy. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.